we're going to cover, let me just show you the article. We're going to cover this. Okay. Kemi Badenoch last week in the Tory party conference promising to cut or abolish completely stamp duty. Now, I pulled this on Instagram because this made me sit up and I sat through the majority of that speech. This at the end made me sit up because of the people that are subscribed to this channel but follow on Instagram. And when I polled it on Instagram, asking people, do you believe that they would do this? As of the time of recording this video, 90% of people said no. The reasons being the obvious ones, right? They could have done this when they were in power 12 years ago. They could have done this at any point in time. Why would they do this now? Because they're desperate for votes. We'll talk about that later on in another video. But I just want to talk about who the winners and the losers are for this because this sounds like a fantastic idea. And me personally, I would welcome it. And I wouldn't welcome it because of benefits to me personally. I'd welcome it because I'm a huge advocate in the fact that I would love younger people to be able to get on the property ladder. And I've given corporate talks, I've given private talks, I've given group talks, I do individual coaching on saving for a deposit. And oftentimes the thing that puts people back 3 to 4 to 6 to 5 months if they're not getting money from the bank of mum and dad is stamp duty, because it's oftentimes one of those situations where people are working so hard to save for a deposit, and because people just generally don't know the process, they then find out there's an extra 3 or 4 5,000 pounds due on stamp duty. So if this is gone, it will accelerate people being able to get on the property ladder, shorten that time frame. It will help the property market, but again, there are winners and losers in this. So let's actually just dive into the article, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are down below. The main question I want to ask here is, do you believe that they could do this? And do you think that this would be generally beneficial to help people get on the property ladder? Because again, winners and losers, there is caveat. There is definitely a possible downside or double-edged sword, I would say, on the property side for first-time buyers at least as well. So it says here, the Tory leader's bold plan will be costly, but the benefits to Britain could make it worthwhile. And in this third paragraph here, it says here, the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch announced a plan to scrap stamp duty, which could allow many more people to move home, resuscitate the property market by boosting transactions, and potentially add billions to the economy. Now, this bit right here, resuscitate the property market, suggests that our property market is dead or it's suffering in some way, shape, or form. I personally would beg to differ. I think we have a very, very strong, robust property market in the UK. And whilst we might have seen a little bit of a slowdown because of general economic situations right now and inflation and interest rates, so on and so forth, I think we still have a pretty resilient property market. But the second bit is the bit that really kind of stands out to me. This paragraph right here. The Alliance calculated that abolishing transaction tax in the UK, including the varying systems in England, Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland, could increase GDP by 17 billion over 10 years. Now, that number sounds interesting, 17 billion over the course of 10 years. But then you've got to think about how much money do they generate in stamp duty every single year. And the next paragraph kind of explains it. So it says here, the plan is very expensive as the levy is a huge cash cow for the treasury, raising 11.6 billion in the 2023-2024 financial year. Ms. Badenoch has insisted the plans were fully costed after her shadow cabinet created a 47 billion pound savings package, almost half of which would come from welfare reforms. Now, before we get onto the whole welfare reform thing, and this is where I'd love your opinion, by the way, if you are cutting off an income source that is generating 11.6, almost 12 billion pounds in one financial year, and taking the long term view that by doing this, you would add 17 billion pounds to the economy over the course of 10 years, there is a net loss there. And I understand that you're taking a long term view here. But the obvious question is, where do you then get the money from to compensate for this scrap in stamp duty? Now, if you watch the Tory party, if you watch the Conservative Party conference, it was quite laughable because she referenced this 47 billion pound savings package a number of times. There was a stage in her speech where the camera was perfectly positioned to capture the ministers as she mentioned their names around the work that they had done. It was very pantomimey, really, to be honest. But £47 billion, she said, which is fully costed for. We're supposed to believe that just straight off the bat. But here's the thing, almost half of it coming from welfare reform. Now, Labour failed to introduce the welfare reform bill. So, from a high level optics point of view, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts here, one could imply or at least think that what they're looking to do is they're looking to help people get on the property ladder whilst taking away from the bottom line. Unless, unfortunately, we're in a reality where the thought of getting on the poverty ladder means that you're in a much, much better place than those people who are low in society. I don't know how it would go down in terms of people feeling just that money's taken from the welfare reforms or taken out of the social service system, right? Money away from people who may need it to give to people who want to get on the property ladder. I don't know how that's going to go down. What do you think? But there are going to be winners and losers in it. So let's just go down here because one of the winners, according to this article, is going to be people who want to move homes. Now, there's some interesting stats here around home movers. It says here, for home movers specifically, they tend to be asset rich but cash poor, have built up equity in property over several decades. So they're talking about people who tend to move around in the run up to retirement. Typically, they're over 55 years old. They need less space and want lower costs as they head towards retirement. The average downsizer in Britain moves to a house worth £280,000 under the proposal. They would potentially save £4,017 on their tax bill. So you can see that the winners, first batch of winners will be people who want to downsize in the run up to retirement. And that, let's be honest, stamp duty and that cost, there's a graph down here which is very, very interesting indeed. This is just a visual representation of how much more expensive stamp duty is in place like London, for example. So they're saying in the lightest parts of the country here, the typical stamp duty bill is £2,500. In London, it's £35,000. So if you're a mover heading towards retirement, like some of you may be on this channel, this could be a positive thing, particularly if you own money in that, you own property in that London area, because it means that you'll be able to make this move, keep more of your money in your pocket, be able to release equity and actually have more money to be able to fund a retirement with. So this will be a good thing in that part. This will also help first time buyers for sure, because like I've already said, I run a lot of workshops where I talk to first time buyers, and oftentimes stamp duty is something that comes as a as a surprise. They haven't accounted for this, and it can put them back 3 to 4 months, sometimes 6 months, because they have to find out that they have to save some additional money. Now, there is one key thing that I do want to highlight here, and this is one of the major pitfalls. Okay, so I'm gonna link this article down below so you can go and get this. But this is the main pitfall that I see. It's saying here that a straightforward tax break would lead to house prices going up, because what you're doing effectively in the economic scale is you're increasing the demand for a asset that is in short supply. So you're taking away the stamp duty barrier, you're giving the people the ability to get on the property ladder faster. You're going to see that increase in the property market, which is where the whole resuscitate statement came from at the beginning, right? But it says here, if, and this is a big if, it is a simple tax giveaway, the likelihood is that the current stamp duty will simply pass through into prices. Values could rise by approximately 1.4 to 2.1% on average between 5,100 and 7,500. He found, depending on exactly how the policy is implemented. Given the way stamp duty works, this could be unevenly distributed across the country's housing stock, with a much greater impact on high value homes, meaning London and the Southeast could benefit the most, he added. Look, this right here is going to be one of the challenges that I think that will be a byproduct of this type of policy coming in, because ultimately this will be inflationary in property prices. I just don't see how it won't be, because at the end of the day, this is where you can't implement this type of policy without having a policy to build more homes. And to be fair, she did speak a lot about how they would cut red tape so people could build faster. in this situation as it currently stands, you're going to have stamp duty being scrapped. You're going to have a very, very short supply of the commodity, the asset that people want to buy. You're going to remove one of the big barriers, which means that savvy landlords and people who own property will basically say, well, actually, we can afford to put this up by £10,000 because people don't have to pay, stamp duty, depending on areas of the country. I think it's a good policy. I think, is it a little too late? Is it one that is a promise in the hopes that they will get votes? Because look, this is a strategic thing. They're appealing to first time buyers, that age group demographic, but really, they're appealing to the older generation, 55 plus, in the run up to retirement, wanting to downsize. You can keep more of your money. We're not going to tax you on this. This could be an important policy. I guess the question is, do you believe that they'll do it if they win? They could have done it previously, which is the argument that I'm seeing on Instagram right now, but they didn't. So why would they do that now? To win the next general election, knowing that their biggest competition is not going to be Labour, it's going to be Reform. What do you think in the comment section down below? Is this going to help? What are your views? I'd love to know. Thanks for watching. Let's have a conversation in the comment section. Cheers.